Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Tuesday the 3rd of September 2019, and we're looking at the issue of a new global reserve currency. What it could look like, why the Governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, is advocating it, and how soon do we believe it could be here. Let's investigate. On the 23rd of August, we published a video entitled Trump, China, Powell, Trade War and Brexit, Jackson Hole Fallout. We've put a link in the description below. Much of that video concentrated at the time on President Trump ratcheting up the rhetoric against China and his frustration with Fed Chair Jerome Powell. However, the purpose of the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium, which was held in Wyoming, 22nd to the 24th of August, was for world central bankers to discuss openly issues which affect their industry. And this year, the subject was challenges for monetary policy. Now, much of our commentary to date on the symposium has been related to what Jerome Powell had to say, particularly about interest rates and various versions of monetary easing. However, one issue which was discussed, and which we intend to address today, was that raised by the Governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, who basically stated that a new global reserve currency was necessary to replace the US dollar. Now, before we go into this, let's, for the benefit of newer subscribers who may be unfamiliar with this issue, explain what a reserve currency actually is. A reserve currency refers to a currency that central banks hold in large quantities as part of their foreign currency reserves. The US dollar is the world's most dominant reserve currency, accounting for just over 60% of foreign currency reserves, with the euro by contrast representing 20%. In addition to this, we have to be mindful that almost a third of countries throughout the world, and not many people are aware of this, a third of them peg their currencies to the US dollar, and half of global trade invoices are denominated in dollars. Now, we are occasionally asked what is a petrodollar, and we may as well cover it here too. The petrodollar is any US dollar paid to oil exporting countries in exchange for oil. Since the dollar is a global currency, all international transactions are priced in dollars. As a result, oil exporting nations must receive dollars. Most of them own their own oil industries. That makes their national income dependent on the dollar's value. If it falls, so does their revenue. As a result, most of these oil exporters also peg their currencies to the dollar. That way, if the dollar value falls, so does the price of all of their domestic goods and services. That helps these countries avoid wide swings in inflation or deflation. So, can you see, just from these two brief definitions, how important the US dollar is to the world, and why we often quote that so many other currencies will collapse before the US dollar does? Because if the dollar begins to fall, these other currencies with much smaller reserves will also fall unless they decouple, which will cause its own problems. Now, this is just one of the reasons we say the dollar is not going to collapse any day soon, but it is an important one. Anyway, having now got those definitions out of the way, let's go back to the Governor of the Bank of England's comments at Jackson Hole. The crux of his argument was that the current global monetary regime, with the dollar at its heart, is unsustainable. So he argued that it would be appropriate or a good idea for policymakers to start planning for that now. He said, quote, "The world's reliance on the US dollar won't hold, and needs to be replaced by a new international monetary and financial system based on many more global currencies, unquote. With what to replace it, Carney stated that the obvious candidate was the renminbi or yuan, as China is the rising power. However, he pointed out that China's currency is very immature in financial system terms. One of the arguments we've put forward many times whenever we hear people state that the yuan will replace the dollar and soon. But there is a more important point that he raised, namely, if you just replace one reserve currency with another, you then end up with the same problem of one country's monetary policy having an outsized global impact. His solution, therefore, is a digital reserve currency based on a basket of currencies, relying less on any one country's currency. He also added that it would be better if such a currency is managed by the public sector as opposed to the private sector. In fact, his long-term proposal is that such a currency is controlled through a network of central bank digital currencies. Initially, he called for the IMF to take charge of a new system of currencies, ensuring emerging economies from destructive capital outflows in dollars and removing their need to hoard US currency. In the longer term, the IMF could, quote, change the game, unquote, by building a multipolar system. He made clear during his talk that the US accounts for only 10% of global trade and 15% of global GDP, but half of trade invoices and 2/3 of global securities issuance. The result of this, and to use his own words, quote, while the world economy is being reordered, the US dollar remains as important as when Bretton Woods collapsed, unquote. Movements in the US dollar are therefore fundamentally important to other economies, even if they have few direct trade links with the US. This means countries are forced to self-insure and hoard or save dollars to guard against potential capital flight, leading to excess savings and lower global growth. The result is that the international monetary system contributes, therefore, to lower global interest rates and has amplified the difficulties central bankers face in addressing downturns. Now, we shall go into the inner workings of the IMF in a different video in the future and explain how he comes to these conclusions. We're also mindful that he is leaving his job at the Bank of England in January and has his eye on the chair of the IMF, though there are many politicians who would not support this. Now, he admits that this is long-term thinking and strategy, and we agree. In fact, we published a YouTube video on this very subject on the 15th of August entitled, Is a Cashless Society Closer Than You Think? And again, we've put a link in the description box below. Now today, for example, as we publish this video, the dollar index stands at 99.2 and seems to be strengthening even further. Do you remember that interview we conducted with Eric Townsend on the 30th of April, where he stated the dollar index could go as high as 100, if not even higher, and we agreed? We got quite a lot of criticism from some members, and one or two cancelled their subscriptions as a result, calling us fake news. Not looking so daft a prediction now, is it? We've provided links below in case you missed that interview. So, the stronger the dollar becomes, the more pressure from the rest of the world to look for an alternative. But we must indeed be mindful that any move towards a global digital currency will in part lead to a reduction of individual monetary freedom and the potential to centralize control. Our assessment is that such a move will be gradual and at first voluntary, but eventually we have no doubt that the New World Order will eventually consist of a total global digital currency controlled by central banks or some form of central governmental institution. What we need to ask, as gold and silver collectors is, will it be based purely on other currencies, or will there be an element of precious metal assignment? What do you think? Do please share your views. We hope you have found this video interesting and informative, and if so, please give it a thumbs up and share it on social media. Please ensure that you have subscribed to our channel and press the bell sign so that you are notified of any future videos. Also, kindly visit our website at illuminatisilver.com, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe either as a free or paying member for regular email updates and offers. Disclaimer: Illuminati Silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.